The courtroom was stifling, the air thick with tension and unspoken words. Samuel Jenkins sat in the back, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, his heart pounding like a distant drum against the hollow silence. At 62, he had learned to navigate the world with a quiet resilience, but today felt different. He was on the brink of a storm he had never wanted to confront. The sunlight poured through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floor, illuminating the stark reality of betrayal that stood just a few feet away. In front of him, at the plaintiff's table, sat his only son, Marcus, flanked by a slick attorney whose smile didn't reach his eyes. Samuel had watched as Marcus, a once bright-eyed boy with dreams of becoming an artist, had been consumed by the relentless grip of greed. The ink on the documents before them was still wet, the betrayal fresh and raw, and Samuel could feel the weight of it pressing down on him like a heavy fog. Marcus had sold the family home, his childhood home, without a second thought, each signature a dagger that twisted deeper into his father's heart. Just moments ago, Samuel had witnessed the final act of this sordid play as Marcus and his attorney had leaned over the table, their heads close together, laughing quietly as they sealed the fate of a life built on love and sacrifice. Samuel had poured everything he had into that house. Late nights after long hours at the factory, the laughter of family dinners, the tears of loss and joy. It was where he had raised Marcus, taught him right from wrong, and now it was being stripped away for a quick profit, a desperate escape from debts that he would never understand. But this wasn't merely about a house. It was about the bond they had shared, now severed and bleeding. Samuel fought back the tears threatening to spill over. He had always been the silent pillar in Marcus's life, the soft-spoken father who encouraged him to chase his dreams, even when those dreams had begun to poison him. As he watched his son's face, twisted with a mix of triumph and desperation, the anger in Samuel grew steadily, a slow burn igniting within. But beneath that anger lay a deeper pain, a sorrow that had been festering since he had discovered Marcus's betrayal. It had been weeks of sleepless nights, filled with whispered conversations and hushed phone calls that had echoed through their home like ghosts. Samuel had learned about the shady deals, the looming debts, the dangerous people Marcus had entangled himself with. The thought twisted his stomach into knots. All of this had been for money. Money that had meant nothing to him but everything to Marcus. As the judge entered the room, Samuel felt a swell of resolve. He had known this moment would come. He had been preparing for it in the shadows, silently gathering his strength. There was a secret that whispered through the recesses of his mind, a hidden resource that Marcus was blissfully unaware of, a legacy left to him by his late father, a modest trust that had been carefully tucked away, meant for emergencies. But this was more than an emergency. It was a chance for redemption, a way to reclaim not just his home, but his dignity. The judge took his seat, and the room quieted, the air electric with anticipation. Samuel's heart raced as he focused on the judge's face, searching for any sign of mercy. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, like the gaze of the universe itself. He was a man who had always been overlooked, underestimated. But as he sat there, he felt a flicker of power rise within him. This was not just a courtroom. It was a battleground, and he was ready to fight. "Mr. Jenkins," the judge intoned, his voice steady, "I trust you understand the proceedings today." "Yes, Your Honor," Samuel replied, his voice steady, though the tremor beneath belied the calm exterior. He could feel Marcus's eyes on him, a mixture of concern and contempt. Samuel met his gaze, holding it with an intensity that surprised even him. There was a moment, a crack in the facade, where the son saw the depth of his father's resolve, and a flicker of fear crossed Marcus's face. As the proceedings began, Samuel listened to the lawyer's arguments, the legal jargon that felt foreign and cold. The words washed over him like a torrent, but he was focused, waiting for the moment that would change everything. He could hear the ticking of the clock, each second pulling him closer to the revelation he had prepared for this very day. Beneath the surface of his calm demeanor, thoughts raced, each one sharper than the last. He would not be the victim today. He would not be the broken man they expected him to be. And then, just as the judge was about to call for a recess, Samuel decided it was time. He reached into his jacket pocket, feeling the weight of the hidden proof that would turn the tide. It was a simple document, a single sheet of paper that held the key to his future and, unbeknownst to Marcus, the chains that could bind him. He took a deep breath, steadied himself, and raised his hand. "Your Honor," he called out, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "I have evidence that may change the outcome of this case." Silence fell in the courtroom, a thick curtain of anticipation. Samuel could see Marcus stiffen, his expression shifting from arrogance to disbelief. In that moment, Samuel felt a surge of empowerment, a wave of satisfaction that washed over him like warm sunlight breaking through a storm. The time for waiting was over. Now was the moment of reckoning, and he was ready to reclaim not just his home, but the respect he had long deserved. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension. Every breath Samuel Jenkins took felt like a weight pressing down on his chest. He could sense the disbelief radiating from his son, Marcus, as the words hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. The judge, a stoic figure presiding over the chaos, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the gavel poised to intervene. "Mr. Jenkins?" the judge intoned, his voice deep and commanding. "Do you have evidence to present? We are not here to engage in theatrics." Samuel glanced at Marcus, whose face had drained of color. The boy he once recognized as his son had morphed into a stranger, a caricature of ambition, greed, and betrayal. He fought against the swell of emotions threatening to engulf him. He could still see the little boy who had chased butterflies in their backyard, the boy whose laughter echoed in the halls of their family home. That boy had vanished, swallowed whole by the darkness of poor choices. "Yes, Your Honor," Samuel said, his voice steady but laced with a tremor of raw emotion. "I have a document that can change everything." He reached into his briefcase, the worn leather creaking as he pulled out a manila envelope. The contents felt like a lifeline, a glimmer of hope in a storm of despair. As he fumbled to open the envelope, he caught a glimpse of Marcus out of the corner of his eye. The arrogance that had once defined him was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped expression that betrayed his mounting anxiety. Samuel couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. The tables had turned, if only for a moment. The judge leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Proceed, Mr. Jenkins. What do you have?" Samuel's hands shook slightly as he pulled out the document. A faded piece of parchment, creased with age but imbued with the weight of his family's history. It was the trust his father had established decades ago, a safety net meant to shield future generations from the very fate Marcus had chosen. "Your Honor," Samuel began, his voice strong despite the tumult within. "This document outlines a trust left by my late father, William Jenkins. It was intended to secure our family home and provide for my son's well-being, to protect him from the pitfalls of greed and ambition." He held the document aloft, feeling the eyes of the courtroom upon him, some filled with curiosity, others with suspicion. "Marcus sold the family home without my consent, without regard for its legacy. This trust was supposed to safeguard that legacy." The judge studied the document, his brow furrowing as he read the details. Samuel could see the wheels turning in his mind, the implications of his words sinking in. Marcus shifted in his seat, his arrogance cracking like glass under pressure. "Dad, you can't do this," he shouted, his voice rising in desperation. "This is just another one of your tricks. You're trying to undermine me because I've moved on. I've worked hard for everything I have." "Hard work doesn't excuse betrayal, Marcus," Samuel replied, his voice firm yet pained. "You sold our family's history for a quick profit. You sold the place where your mother and I raised you, where you learned to ride a bike, where we celebrated birthdays and holidays. You've turned your back on everything that mattered." The courtroom fell silent, the weight of Samuel's words pressing into the space between them. He felt a rush of anger, but beneath it lay a current of sorrow for the son he once knew. "Your Honor," the attorney interjected, his voice smooth and calculated, "that document is irrelevant. The property was legally sold, and it's now in the hands of a buyer. Mr. Jenkins cannot simply produce a piece of paper and expect it to reverse a transaction." Samuel's heart sank, but he refused to back down. "It's not just a piece of paper. It's a promise my father made to protect our family. If this trust is still valid, it outlaws any sale made without my approval. We can prove that Marcus acted against my interest, against his own family." "Can you prove it?" the attorney countered, a smirk creeping onto his face. "Do you have any evidence that the trust is still in effect?" Samuel swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the courtroom's gaze upon him. "I have the original document and a letter from the estate lawyer confirming its terms. It's a living trust and I'm still the beneficiary. I can present this to the court." As the judge contemplated, Samuel felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was his moment, a chance to reclaim not just the family home but the fractured bond with his son. But as he glanced at Marcus, he saw a man transformed, one who had long since abandoned the values Samuel had instilled in him. "Your Honor," Marcus exclaimed, desperation creeping into his voice, "this isn't fair. I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to build a life for myself. You can't let him take everything away from me." Samuel's heart ached at the raw emotion in his son's voice. He wanted to reach out, to comfort the boy in front of him, the one who had once looked up to him with wide eyes full of admiration. But the man he saw now was driven by something darker. "Life isn't fair, Marcus," Samuel said softly, the words slipping from his lips like a prayer. "But it's our choices that define us. You chose to sell our home. You chose to betray your family. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to make things right." The judge cleared his throat, bringing everyone's attention back to him. "Mr. Jenkins, if you can provide the documentation to support your claim, we will consider it." Samuel nodded, feeling a rush of determination. "I can do that, Your Honor." "Then I suggest we take a brief recess," the judge announced, "to allow Mr. Jenkins to gather the necessary documents. Court will reconvene in 30 minutes. As the gavel struck, Samuel felt a mix of relief and anxiety. He had won a small victory, but the battle was far from over. He turned to Marcus, whose eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and resentment. "This isn't over, Dad," Marcus hissed, his voice barely a whisper. "You don't know what you're getting into." "I know exactly what I'm getting into," Samuel replied, his voice steady. "I'm fighting for what's right for our family." Marcus shook his head, a bitter smile curling at the corners of his lips. "Family? You're fighting for a ghost. You think that trust will save us? You're just holding on to memories, Dad. They're not going to bring Mom back, and they won't fix what's broken between us." Samuel's heart clenched at his son's words, but he couldn't let that pain deter him. "Marcus, I'm not just fighting for memories. I'm fighting for our future. You still have a chance to choose differently." With that, Marcus turned away, storming towards the exit, leaving Samuel standing alone in the courtroom, a sense of dread settling over him. The weight of the past loomed larger than ever, but he couldn't allow it to crush him. He had to believe that redemption was possible, that he could still reach the son he had lost. As the courtroom emptied, he felt a sense of resolve wash over him. He would gather the documents. He would fight for their home, for their legacy, and perhaps, just perhaps, for the hope of rebuilding the bridge that had been burned between them. With a deep breath, he stepped out of the courtroom, the world outside waiting. Uncertain, daunting, but ripe with possibility. The battle was far from over, but Samuel was ready to take on whatever came next. The air in the hallway felt thick and suffocating, as if it were holding its breath alongside Samuel Jenkins. He leaned against the cool, unforgiving wall, the rough texture biting into his palm as he tried to steady his racing heart. The echoes of Marcus's desperate pleas lingered in his mind, mingling with memories of laughter and warmth from their family home, a place now tainted by betrayal and greed. "Dad, you can't just throw away everything I've built." Marcus's voice had pierced through the courtroom like a sharp knife. The rawness of his anger, the bitterness behind his words, left Samuel feeling hollow, as if the very air had been siphoned from his lungs. That was his son, standing in stark contrast to the boy who used to sit on his knees, dreaming of canvases and colors. "Samuel," a voice broke through his reverie. It was his attorney, Martin, a wiry man with silver hair and a penchant for well-tailored suits. "We need to prepare. The judge will call us back soon." Samuel nodded, his mind racing. Martin's expression was a mix of urgency and concern. He could see the tension etched into Samuel's face, the lines deepening with every passing moment. "You have to be ready to present the full extent of that trust. It's not just about the house. It's about your legacy." "Legacy," Samuel echoed softly, the weight of the word settling heavily on his shoulders. The family home had always been more than just bricks and mortar. It was a sanctuary filled with memories, laughter, and love. Now it felt like a battleground, and he was determined to reclaim it, not just for himself, but for Marcus too. "Let's go over the details again," Martin urged, pulling Samuel's focus back to the present. "The judge will want to see how the trust was set up, who the beneficiaries are, and most importantly, the terms regarding the sale of the property. You need to be clear about how this impacts your claim." Samuel inhaled deeply, drawing on the resolve that had simmered within him since the moment he discovered the hidden document in his late father's desk. The trust was a lifeline, and he needed to wield it with precision. "It states that the property cannot be sold without the consent of all beneficiaries," he stated, his voice steadier now. "Exactly," Martin replied, his eyes lighting up with the spark of hope. "You're the primary beneficiary. Marcus may have acted impulsively, but that doesn't erase your rights. If we present this correctly, we can halt the sale and potentially reverse it." Samuel's chest tightened as he thought about Marcus's face, twisted in anger and defiance. The boy he once knew had transformed into a stranger, driven by ambition and resentment. "But what if he doesn't care about the trust?" Samuel murmured, the weight of doubt creeping in. "What if he's willing to fight me every step of the way?" Martin placed a reassuring hand on Samuel's shoulder. "Then we'll fight back. You have the truth on your side, and that carries power." As they prepared to return to the courtroom, Samuel caught a glimpse of the documents in his briefcase. The trust, a symbol of his father's love and foresight. It felt heavy, almost like a talisman against the encroaching shadows of despair. He clutched it tightly, the edges digging into his palm, a reminder of what was at stake. The gavel echoed through the corridors as they re-entered the courtroom, the judge's authority palpable as he took his seat. The air was electric, charged with tension as if the very walls were witnesses to the unfolding drama. Samuel took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "Mr. Jenkins," the judge intoned, his voice steady and commanding, "you've requested to present further evidence regarding the trust. Please proceed." Samuel stepped forward, heart pounding like a distant drum. Every eye in the room was on him, including Marcus's, whose expression was a tempest of anger and disdain. "Your Honor," Samuel began, his voice trembling slightly before he steadied it, "I would like to present the trust document established by my late father, which outlines the terms of ownership for our family home." He opened the briefcase, his hands shaking as he extracted the carefully preserved document. The parchment felt fragile yet powerful in his grasp, a testament to his father's intentions. This document clearly states that the property cannot be sold without the consent of both beneficiaries. I am the primary beneficiary and my son. He paused, the weight of the moment crashing over him. He acted without my consent. The judge leaned forward, his expression unreadable as he examined the document. And you believe this trust invalidates the sale of the property? Yes, Your Honor, Samuel replied, his voice gaining strength. It's not just about the house. It's about preserving our family's legacy. My father wanted to ensure that our home remained a sanctuary for generations to come. I cannot stand by while it is sold off to satisfy debts incurred by my son's choices. Marcus surged to his feet, his face flushed with anger. This is absurd. You're using our father's wishes against me. I was trying to save us, to save our family name. By selling our family home? Samuel shot back, his voice rising. You've betrayed everything our family stands for. Marcus, this isn't just about you. It's about honoring our past and protecting our future. The judge's gavel rapped sharply against the wood, silencing the heated exchange. Order in the court, he commanded, his voice reverberating through the room. I will not tolerate outbursts. Samuel's heart raced as he watched the judge lean back in his chair, considering the implications of the evidence before him. The silence stretched painfully, a taut wire ready to snap. Moments felt like hours as the atmosphere crackled with unresolved tension. Finally, the judge spoke, his voice measured. I will need time to review this document and its implications regarding the sale of the property. I will reconvene in 1 hour. As the gavel fell, Samuel could feel the weight of the moment settle upon him. The judge's decision could tip the scales of justice, but it was more than just a legal battle. It was a chance to reclaim not just a house, but the bond with his son. As the courtroom emptied, Samuel caught Marcus's eye. For a fleeting moment, he saw something flicker beneath the anger, perhaps regret or fear, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a steely resolve. They were on opposite sides of an emotional chasm, and the bridge between them seemed more fragile than ever. Samuel, Martin's voice pulled him back. We need to prepare for the next phase. This is just the beginning. Samuel nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Would Marcus be willing to listen? Would he see the trust not as a weapon, but as a lifeline? The prospect of reconciliation felt as daunting as the courtroom battle itself. Outside the courthouse, the late afternoon sun bathed the world in golden light, a stark contrast to the darkness that loomed within. Samuel paused, inhaling deeply. He needed to find a way to reach Marcus, to remind him of the love that once bound them. As he walked away, a plan began to form, one that would require vulnerability and courage. He would have to confront the ghosts of their past, to remind Marcus of the dreams they once shared. It wouldn't be easy, but nothing worth fighting for ever was. With each step, Samuel felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. He was no longer just a victim of circumstance. He was a father fighting for his son, for their future, and for the legacy that deserved to endure. The courtroom was just the beginning of a much larger battle, one that would determine not only the fate of their family home but the very essence of what it meant to be a Jenkins. The gavel echoed through the courtroom, a sharp crack that sliced through the heavy tension hanging in the air. Samuel Jenkins felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders, a mix of hope and dread swirling in his chest like a tempest. He sat there, the trust document clutched tightly in his trembling hand, the ink on the paper still fresh in his mind. His father's words echoed faintly, a ghostly reminder of a simpler time when family meant everything. Court is adjourned for a brief recess, the judge announced, his voice steady yet commanding as he rose from his seat. The room buzzed with muted conversations, the sound a dull roar against Samuel's ears. He remained seated, his mind racing, thoughts colliding like storm clouds. Marcus stood at the opposing table, his expression a mask of frustration and disbelief. Samuel could see the twitch in his son's jaw, the way his fingers fidgeted with the edges of the legal documents scattered before him. It was a small detail, one Samuel had noticed countless times before, yet now it felt like a chasm had opened between them, a stark reminder of the gulf that had widened in their relationship. "Dad, you don't have to do this," Marcus said, his voice low but edged with desperation. The tension in his tone struck Samuel like a slap, a reminder that behind the ambition and the greed, there was still a boy who had once looked up to him, who had once sought his approval. "I have to, Marcus," Samuel replied, finding the strength in his resolve. "This isn't just about the house. It's about what it represents. Family, legacy, those things matter." He felt a flicker of hope, a spark igniting within him. Perhaps this wasn't just a battle for property. It was a chance to salvage the remnants of their relationship. Marcus shook his head, his frustration boiling over. "You're being sentimental. That house is a burden, Dad. There's a weight holding us back. Selling it was the right choice. You know that." Samuel's heart sank, the familiarity of those words cutting deeper than he expected. They echoed the very sentiments that had driven Marcus to betray him, the allure of a quick fix overshadowing the years of love and sacrifice that had gone into maintaining their family home. "You think selling it will free us?" he challenged, his voice steady, though his heart was anything but. "What about the memories, the sacrifices? They can't be measured in dollars." "Memories don't pay bills, Dad," Marcus shot back, his voice now rising. "You don't understand how hard it is out there. I can't keep chasing dreams when reality is knocking down my door. I thought you'd get that." The words hung in the air, a bitter reminder of the chasm between their worlds. Samuel's heart ached for the son he once knew, the boy who had laughed and painted the walls of their home with vibrant colors, each stroke a testament to his dreams. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man whose ambition had twisted into something dark and unrecognizable. "Marcus, I understand more than you think," Samuel replied, his voice softer now. "I've fought my own battles, made sacrifices for you and your future. That house is not just bricks and mortar. It's our history. It's where your mother and I built our lives. It's where you took your first steps." For a fleeting moment, Marcus's expression wavered, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his hardened facade. But just as quickly, it was replaced by a stoic resolve. "And what about my future, Dad? You're willing to risk everything for some dusty old memories? I need to think about my life, my art. This is my chance." Samuel felt a pang of sorrow wash over him. He wanted to reach out, to pull Marcus back from the edge of this precipice. But how could he, when that very edge was a choice his son had made? "Art is important, but so is family. You're losing sight of what really matters." Just then, the sharp sound of the gavel rapped through the air again, and the judge returned to the bench, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Let's resume," he said, his voice firm as he settled back into his seat. The weight of authority returned, and Samuel felt the anticipation in the room shift once more. "Mr. Jenkins," the judge began, his gaze fixed on Samuel, "I believe we need to address the trust document you presented. It raises significant questions about the legitimacy of the sale your son has initiated. I'd like to hear your argument regarding its implications." Samuel straightened, the gravity of the moment settling in. He took a deep breath, steadying himself against the tide of anxiety. "Your Honor," he began, his voice gaining strength, "the trust my father established clearly states that the family home cannot be sold without the consent of all beneficiaries. I am a beneficiary, and as such, my consent was never sought or given." Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but Samuel pressed on, feeling the urgency of the moment. "This house is not just a property. It is a legacy. My father believed in the importance of family, and he entrusted this home to us with that belief in mind. Selling it without my agreement is not only legally wrong, it is morally reprehensible." The judge nodded, clearly processing Samuel's words. "And what do you propose, Mr. Jenkins?" If this sale is deemed invalid, what would you like to see happen? Samuel hesitated, the weight of his answer heavy on his heart. I want to reclaim the house, Your Honor, he said finally, determination threading through his voice. I want to restore our family's home and, if possible, my relationship with my son. I believe that if we can return to that place of love and safety, we can rebuild what has been lost. The judge leaned back in his chair, his expression contemplative. The room held its breath, the tension palpable. Samuel's heart raced as he glanced at Marcus, searching for any sign of understanding, any flicker of the son he once knew. But Marcus's face was a mask of defiance, clenched jaw and narrowed eyes, as if Samuel's words were little more than a distant echo. Mr. Jenkins, the judge said, breaking the silence, I will need to review the trust document and its stipulations further. Given the significance of this case, I suggest we take a brief recess for thorough examination. I will reconvene shortly. As the gavel fell again, signaling another break, Samuel felt a mixture of hope and fear. The judge's words offered a glimmer of possibility, yet the reality of his son's ambition loomed larger than ever. Would Marcus ever see the value of family over personal gain? Could he find a way to bridge the chasm that had formed between them? Dad, Marcus said, his voice low and strained as the crowd began to disperse. You're making a mistake. You're pushing me away. Samuel looked at his son, the pain etched into his features. I'm not trying to push you away, Marcus. I'm trying to pull you back. Back to us, back to what matters. But Marcus's eyes were hardened, the distance between them growing wider with each passing second. You'll never understand, he muttered, turning away, leaving Samuel to wrestle with the weight of his own heartache. As the courtroom emptied, Samuel sat in silence, the trust document resting heavily on the table before him. The fight was far from over, and the stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. But he could feel the flicker of resolve within him, a small flame that refused to be extinguished. He would fight for his home, for his legacy, and most importantly, for the son he still believed could be saved. With each passing moment, Samuel knew the true battle was not just for a piece of property. It was for the soul of their family, and he was determined not to lose. The gavel struck with a sharp crack, reverberating through the tense silence of the courtroom. The judge, a stoic figure draped in black robes, leaned forward, resting his chin on his intertwined fingers. His gaze flickered between Samuel and Marcus, the weight of their familial conflict heavy in the air. Samuel felt a bead of sweat trickle down his back. The room was stifling, the air thick with anticipation. He could hear the rustle of papers, the faint clicking of a pen, and the low murmurs of spectators who had come to witness the unfolding drama. Court will resume in 10 minutes, the judge announced, his voice steady but firm, cutting through the tension like a knife. He rose, the sound of his chair scraping against the polished wooden floor echoing in the hushed room. Samuel watched as the judge exited, leaving behind a lingering silence that felt almost oppressive. Marcus's attorney, a slick man in a tailored suit, leaned against the table, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. You think this document will save you, old man? He taunted, his voice dripping with condescension. It's just a piece of paper. The law is on our side. Samuel clenched his fists, the anger bubbling beneath the surface. He wanted to lash out, to scream that this was not just about a house, but about everything they once held dear. It's not just a document, he replied, his voice steady despite the tempest raging inside him. It's our legacy. Marcus, still seated, looked away, his expression a mix of defiance and defeat. The shadows under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and burdens too heavy for a son to bear. You don't understand, Dad. I had to do what I did. The debt, the bills. The art world isn't what it used to be. I was trying to save us. His voice cracked, betraying a hint of vulnerability that Samuel hadn't seen in years. "Save us," Samuel echoed, incredulity creeping into his tone. "You think selling your home was the answer? You've betrayed not just me, but everything our family stands for." Each word felt like a weight lifted, yet Samuel could see the hurt flash across Marcus's features. The tension stretched thin between them, a taut wire ready to snap. Samuel's heart ached at the sight of his son, once a boy filled with dreams, now lost in a maze of ambition and desperation. He wanted to reach out, to pull Marcus back from the edge of this abyss, but he didn't know how. A few moments later, the judge returned, his expression inscrutable. He settled into his chair, adjusting his glasses and peering at the document Samuel had presented earlier. "I've reviewed the trust," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. "It appears to provide specific conditions regarding the family home. However, there are complexities involved." Samuel held his breath, his heart pounding like a distant drum in his chest. The room felt charged, the air thick with possibility. "What does that mean?" he asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "It means," the judge continued, "that while the trust is valid, it will require further examination of the circumstances surrounding its creation and the implications of its terms. We may need to call in witnesses or consult legal experts." Marcus shifted in his seat, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "Witnesses?" he muttered, glancing at his attorney, who shrugged nonchalantly. "What more is there to discuss? It's just a trust. We sold the house fairly." Samuel leaned forward, his voice rising in intensity. "It's not just any house, Marcus. It's our home. It's where your mother and I built our lives, where you grew up. This trust," he paused, gathering his thoughts, "it's a representation of everything we've fought for. It's not just about money. It's about our family history." The judge nodded, acknowledging Samuel's passion. "While I understand the emotional weight behind this case, we must adhere to the legal process. I will schedule a hearing to review the trust in greater detail. Until then, the sale remains paused." Marcus's face hardened, shadows of anger flaring in his eyes. "You can't be serious. This is ridiculous. I won't let you take away what I've worked for." "What you've worked for?" Samuel challenged, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "You've destroyed our family for a quick buck. You've sacrificed everything we built for your own greed. Enough!" The judge's voice boomed like thunder, silencing the room. "This court is not a place for personal vendettas. I will not tolerate outbursts." He looked sternly at both Samuel and Marcus, his gaze piercing. "I expect decorum. This is a legal matter, not a family feud." The air felt electric as Samuel and Marcus exchanged a lingering glance, a moment suspended in time. Samuel could see the hurt, the anger, and perhaps a glimmer of regret in Marcus's eyes. The fracture between them was deep, but Samuel sensed a flicker of hope, a chance for reconciliation, if only they could navigate this labyrinth of emotions. As the judge called for a recess, Samuel stepped outside the courtroom, needing space to breathe. The hallway was dimly lit, the walls lined with portraits of past judges, their eyes seemingly watching his every move. He leaned against the cool stone wall, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside him. He thought of the family home, its worn wooden floors, the smell of his late wife's cooking wafting through the air, the laughter of their shared memories echoing in the halls. That house represented more than just bricks and mortar. It was a sanctuary of love, a tapestry woven with joy and sorrow. Yet, it was also a battleground, a place where dreams had been built and shattered. "Dad!" The soft voice broke through his reverie. He turned to see Marcus standing a few feet away, uncertainty etched across his face. "Can we talk?" Samuel hesitated, the weight of their previous argument still heavy in the air. "What's there to talk about?" he replied, trying to keep his tone measured. "You've made your choice clear." "I was wrong," Marcus said, stepping closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't realize how much it would hurt you. I thought selling the house would help us both. I never wanted to hurt you." Samuel's heart softened at the admission, but the wounds ran deep. "You didn't just sell a house, Marcus. You sold our family history. You erased everything we built together." "I know," Marcus replied, his eyes searching Samuel's, filled with a mix of regret and desperation. "I can't change what I did, but I want to make it right. I want to understand what this trust means to you, to us." Samuel studied him, weighing the sincerity in his son's eyes. The years of resentment and disappointment clashed with a flicker of hope. "It's not just about the trust, son. It's about trust itself. You've betrayed me, and that's not something I can easily forgive." "I know," Marcus said, his voice cracking, "but I'm willing to fight for it. I want to fight for us. Can't we try to fix this together?" Samuel felt the walls he'd built around his heart begin to tremble. The anger he had felt was still there, but beneath it lay a yearning for connection, for healing. "I don't know if we can fix it," he admitted, the vulnerability spilling from his lips. "But we can try. I'll fight for the house, for our family. But you need to fight for us too." A moment of understanding passed between them, fragile yet profound. Marcus nodded slowly, determination lighting his eyes. "I will. I promise." As they stood together in the dimly lit hallway, Samuel felt the first stirrings of hope. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could navigate it together. The battle in the courtroom was only the beginning. The real fight lay in reclaiming their bond, a journey toward redemption that was worth every step. The recess felt interminable, an agonizing stretch of time where the air hung thick with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. Samuel Jenkins leaned against the cold, hard surface of the courtroom bench, his heart still racing from the confrontation with Marcus. He gazed out the tall windows, where pale light filtered through, casting soft shadows on the polished floor. Outside, life continued unabated, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside the courtroom walls. As the gavel struck, signaling the end of the recess, Samuel straightened. The judge, a stern man with deep-set eyes and a furrowed brow, took his seat once more, commanding the attention of everyone present. Samuel felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. This was not just a legal battle. It was a fight for the very essence of his family, a legacy that now hung in the balance. "Court is back in session," the judge announced, his voice echoing in the tense atmosphere. "Let's proceed with the examination of the family trust in question." Samuel's breath quickened as the attorney, a slick man in a tailored suit, rose to present his case. He spoke with a calculated precision, his words sliding like silk over the jagged edges of the truth. Samuel watched intently, every fiber of his being focused on the man who had brought so much pain into his life. "Your Honor," the attorney began, "the trust document in question was established by Mr. Jenkins' late wife, and it clearly stipulates that the family home is to be maintained as a secure asset for the Jenkins heirs. It is evident that my client, Mr. Marcus Jenkins, acted without the authority granted him under the terms of this trust." Samuel could see Marcus squirm in his seat, the corners of his mouth twitching as he absorbed the weight of his own decisions. For a moment, Samuel felt a flicker of sympathy for the son he once knew, a boy who used to chase fireflies in the backyard, his laughter ringing like music on warm summer nights. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man whose greed had eclipsed the very values Samuel had fought to instill. "Mr. Jenkins?" the judge interjected, his gaze fixed on Marcus. "Do you acknowledge the terms of the family trust as presented?" Marcus hesitated, the tension in his shoulders betraying his bravado. "Yes, Your Honor, I understand the terms," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. But, The judge's tone was sharp, cutting through the courtroom like a knife. "I thought I was doing what was best for my future," Marcus continued, desperation creeping into his voice. "I thought selling the house would give me the financial freedom to pursue my art, to finally break free from the shadows of—" "Enough," the judge commanded, silencing him with a wave of his hand. "Your personal ambitions do not excuse your actions." Samuel felt a surge of satisfaction. The judge's words struck a chord deep within him, echoing his own feelings of betrayal and disappointment. "Your Honor," Samuel interjected, rising to his feet, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "If I may, I have additional evidence regarding the trust that I'd like to present." The judge turned his attention to Samuel, his expression softening slightly. "Proceed, Mr. Jenkins." With a deep breath, Samuel reached into his briefcase and pulled out the envelope he had tucked away, the hidden proof that had driven him to this moment. He opened it slowly, his hands trembling with a mix of anxiety and resolve. Inside lay the original trust document, yellowed with age but unmistakable in its intent. "This," Samuel said, holding it up for all to see, "is the original family trust document, signed by my wife. It includes an addendum that clearly outlines the stipulations regarding the family home, including the requirement for unanimous consent from all heirs before any sale can take place." A murmur rippled through the courtroom, the weight of Samuel's revelation settling over the room like a thick fog. He could feel Marcus's gaze bore into him, a mixture of shock and fury swirling behind his son's eyes. "Your Honor," the attorney for Marcus interjected, his voice growing sharp, "this document has not been authenticated. We have no way of knowing if it is legitimate or if it was altered in any way." The judge narrowed his eyes at the attorney. "Mr. Jenkins," he said, addressing Samuel, "do you have any evidence to support the authenticity of this document?" "I do," Samuel replied, his voice gaining strength. "I have a witness, Margaret Thompson, our family's attorney for over 30 years. She can confirm the validity of the trust and the addendum." "Very well," the judge said, raising his hand to silence the murmurs of the courtroom. "I will allow her testimony. However, I caution all parties to remain civil during these proceedings." As Samuel nodded, a sense of empowerment surged through him. He had fought for this moment and had finally found the strength to reclaim not just the family home but the bond he had once cherished with Marcus. The judge tapped his gavel, then addressed the court. "Let's take a brief recess while we arrange for Ms. Thompson to be brought in. We will reconvene in 15 minutes." Samuel watched as the courtroom emptied, the tension dissipating slightly, but his heart remained heavy. He couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that still lingered between him and Marcus. As they filed out, Samuel caught Marcus's eye. There was a moment, a fleeting second, where the walls that had built up over the years felt as if they might crumble. "Dad," Marcus began, his voice low, a hint of vulnerability threading through the usually defiant tone. "I don't," Samuel interrupted, his voice firm yet weary. "You had your chance to explain. You chose greed over family." "I know," Marcus replied, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "But I thought if I could just get ahead, I could make things right. I didn't think it would come to this." "Maybe you should have thought harder," Samuel shot back, the anger bubbling just below the surface. "This isn't just about money, Marcus. It's about our family, our history. You've torn that apart." Marcus's expression shifted, the bravado fading away to reveal the boy Samuel once knew, lost and searching. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just—" "Enough," Samuel said, turning away. He couldn't bear to see the pain in his son's eyes, the same pain he felt mirrored within himself. Instead, he chose to focus on the upcoming testimony, on the fight that lay ahead. A fight not just for a house, but for the chance to rebuild whatever remained of their shattered relationship. As they waited for Margaret's arrival, Samuel's mind raced through memories of the family home, the laughter that had once filled its walls, and the love that had been shared there. He thought of his late wife, her unwavering support, and the dreams they had built together. The home had always been a sanctuary, a symbol of their love and sacrifice, and now it felt like a battlefield. When Margaret Thompson finally entered the courtroom, her presence was like a breath of fresh air. She was a woman of grace and strength, her silver hair pulled back into a neat bun, her eyes sharp and focused. Samuel felt a swell of hope as she took the stand, her demeanor calm and composed. "Ms. Thompson," the judge began, "can you confirm the authenticity of the trust document in question?" "Yes, Your Honor," Margaret replied, her voice steady. "I drafted the trust document myself, and I can affirm that the addendum regarding the family home is indeed legitimate. It was signed by Mrs. Jenkins and witnessed in my presence." Samuel's heart raced as the courtroom buzzed with murmured disbelief. Marcus sat rigid, his face pale as the truth settled in around him. "Your Honor," the attorney for Marcus attempted to interject, but the judge held up a hand. "Let's give Ms. Thompson the opportunity to finish her testimony." Margaret continued, "The intent behind the trust was to protect the family home as a place of refuge for the Jenkins heirs. It was never meant to be sold without mutual agreement. The stipulations are clear, and any sale made without the consent of all heirs is invalid." Samuel felt a mix of relief and vindication wash over him. The judge nodded thoughtfully, processing the information. "Thank you, Ms. Thompson," he said after a moment. "I believe that clears up the matter significantly. Mr. Jenkins, do you have anything further to add?" Samuel shook his head, his heart pounding in his chest. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the chance to reclaim not only the family home but to hold Marcus accountable for his actions. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady, "I want to emphasize that this home is not just a property to me. It's a legacy, a testament to love, sacrifice, and family. I'm not here to punish my son, but to restore what has been lost." The judge regarded Samuel with a mixture of respect and understanding. "I appreciate your perspective, Mr. Jenkins. Family bonds are complex, and it's clear that this case runs deeper than mere legalities. I will take all evidence presented into consideration before rendering my decision." As the courtroom began to clear, Samuel felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight was not over, but he had taken a significant step toward reclaiming not just the house, but the essence of their family. He glanced at Marcus, who sat in silence, a mixture of regret and realization washing over his features. "Whatever happens next, Marcus," Samuel said softly, "I want you to understand that family is worth fighting for, but you have to be willing to fight alongside me, not against me." Marcus met his gaze, the walls that had long divided them beginning to tremble. "I understand, Dad," he murmured, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. "I want to fight too." As they stepped out of the courtroom together, the weight of the past still heavy on their shoulders, Samuel felt a spark of determination ignite within him. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, he felt the possibility of redemption, both for himself and for his son. And that was a fight worth engaging in. The weight of evidence. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension, each breath Samuel took feeling like a weight pressing down on his chest. The judge, a stern figure with graying hair and a gaze that could pierce through steel, leaned forward slightly in his seat, the gavel resting within reach. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the soft rustle of papers as Samuel prepared to present the hidden proof that could alter the course of everything. "Mr. Jenkins," the judge called, his voice steady yet authoritative, "you may proceed with your evidence." Samuel's heart raced, the rhythm of his pulse thrumming in his ears. He glanced at Marcus, whose expression had shifted from defiance to uncertainty. There was a flicker of something in his son's eyes. Was it regret? Fear? Whatever it was, Samuel knew he had to capitalize on it. With trembling hands, He retrieved the aged document from the folder resting on the table before him. The paper was yellowed with age, the ink faded but still legible. He held it up to the light, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "This is the trust my father established, Judge. It clearly states that any sale of the family home requires the unanimous consent of all heirs." A murmur rippled through the courtroom, a wave of disbelief from the onlookers who had been following the case with bated breath. Samuel could feel their eyes boring into him, their collective anticipation heightening the stakes. He turned his gaze back to the judge, who was examining the document with a furrowed brow. "Is this authentic?" the judge asked, glancing up to meet Samuel's gaze. "Yes, Your Honor," Samuel replied, his voice firm. "I have the original, and I can provide any additional verification needed. This document is my father's last wish for us, to keep the house a home, not a commodity to be sold off." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his fingers twitching as he tried to maintain composure. "It doesn't matter," he interjected, his tone defensive. "That trust is outdated. It doesn't reflect the reality of our situation." Samuel's heart sank at his son's words, but he pressed on, undeterred. "The essence of the trust remains. My father believed in unity in family. He would have never wanted to see this house torn apart by greed. This place is our legacy, Marcus. You can't just throw it away because you want something more." Marcus opened his mouth to retort but paused, the weight of Samuel's words hanging in the air between them. Samuel could see the internal struggle within him, a battle between ambition and familial ties that had been waging for far too long. The judge cleared his throat, redirecting the focus. "Mr. Jenkins, I understand the emotional weight behind your claim, but we must consider the legalities of the situation. If this trust is valid, it will certainly complicate the sale. However, I will need to hear from both parties before making any decisions." Samuel nodded, his heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. He had laid his cards on the table, but the outcome was still uncertain. The judge turned his attention to Marcus, who had grown quiet, his brow furrowed as if weighing the implications of this revelation. "Marcus, would you like to respond to your father's claims?" the judge prompted. Marcus shifted in his seat, his expression hardening once again. "I didn't sell the house because I wanted to hurt him. I did it because I thought it was for the best. We're drowning in debts, and the house was the only asset worth anything." "But you didn't even consult me," Samuel shouted, the weight of betrayal crashing down on him once more. "You made that decision without even thinking of what it meant for us, for our family. This house isn't just a financial asset. It's our home." The tension in the room escalated, a palpable crackling energy that hung heavy in the air. The judge's gavel struck the desk, drawing attention back to him. "Order. This is a courtroom, not a family quarrel. I need to remind you both that emotions can cloud judgment, and that's why we rely on legal documents and the law to guide us." Samuel took a deep breath, grounding himself in the present. He had spent years feeling like a victim of circumstance, but now, standing there with the hidden proof of his father's intentions, he felt a flicker of empowerment. He was no longer just the betrayed but also the protector of their legacy. "Your Honor," Samuel said, his voice steady, "I ask that you consider the spirit of my father's wishes alongside the letter of the law. This home has been a sanctuary for our family for generations. My father worked tirelessly to provide for us, and I refuse to let that be overshadowed by greed and ambition. We have a chance to heal and rebuild, but only if we honor his memory." The judge nodded slowly, the weight of Samuel's words sinking in. "Your passion for your family's legacy is commendable, Mr. Jenkins. However, we must also address the practicalities of the situation. I will need to review all documents related to this case before making any final rulings." Marcus's expression shifted again, the bravado fading as he absorbed the reality of the situation. Samuel watched as his son's defenses crumbled, revealing a vulnerability he had not seen in years. The courtroom felt smaller, the world outside fading away as the two men faced each other. "Dad," Marcus finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to come to this." Samuel's heart ached at the sound of his son's voice, the familiar timbre laced with regret. "Then why did you let it?" he asked, the hurt evident in his tone. "Why didn't you talk to me? We could have found a solution together." "I thought I could fix things," Marcus admitted, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I thought selling the house was a way to put us back on track. I wanted to be the one to save us. By tearing apart the very foundation we built?" Samuel's voice trembled, a mixture of anger and sorrow flooding through him. "You are my son, Marcus. We are supposed to face these battles together, not against each other." The silence that followed was heavy, the air thick with unspoken words and painful memories. Samuel felt a flicker of hope, a tiny ember igniting within him. Perhaps this was the moment they could begin to rebuild their fractured relationship. Not just for the house, but for each other. "Your Honor," Samuel said, turning back to the judge, "I ask for a brief recess. I believe that we need time to reflect on what has been said here today. Time to consider the real stakes, not just the legal ones, but the emotional ones as well." The judge regarded him thoughtfully, then nodded. "Very well. We will reconvene in 30 minutes. I suggest both parties take this time to reflect on the situation at hand." As the gavel fell, signaling the recess, Samuel felt a rush of adrenaline. This was not just a battle for the family home. It was a chance to reclaim a piece of their relationship that had been lost in the chaos of ambition and betrayal. Samuel caught Marcus's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them, a flicker of hope amidst the ruins. As the courtroom began to empty, Samuel took a deep breath, knowing that whatever happened next, he was prepared to fight not just for the house, but for the bond they once shared, buried beneath layers of hurt and misunderstanding. He was ready to navigate the tumultuous waters ahead, ready to confront the past and forge a new path, together. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension, a palpable weight that pressed down on Samuel Jenkins's chest as he stood on the precipice of a decision that could alter the course of his life and his relationship with Marcus forever. The judge, a stern man with graying hair and a pair of half-moon spectacles perched precariously on his nose, looked down at the documents spread before him. Samuel's heart pounded like a distant drum, a steady reminder of the stakes involved, not just for him, but for the legacy of the family that had been built over generations. "Mr. Jenkins," the judge began, lifting his gaze to meet Samuel's. "You believe that this trust mandates unanimous consent for the sale of the property in question?" Samuel nodded, his throat dry as he spoke. "Yes, Your Honor. The trust explicitly states that any decision regarding the family home requires agreement from both myself and my son." Marcus, in his haste to solve his financial troubles, disregarded that. Marcus, who had been sitting with his arms crossed, his expression a mix of defiance and desperation, shifted in his seat. "Dad, you can't be serious. This is about survival. Selling the house was the only way to get out from under the debt. You know that." His voice rose, echoing off the high ceilings, a desperate plea laced with anger. Samuel's gaze hardened, his emotions a storm swirling within him. "Survival at what cost, Marcus? You're willing to sacrifice our family's history, our memories, for a quick fix? This home is not just bricks and mortar. It's everything we built together." The words fell from his lips like stones, heavy and laden with the weight of years spent nurturing that very legacy. The judge raised a hand, silencing the escalating argument. "Order, please. I'd like to hear the witness you've brought forward to authenticate the trust, Mr. Jenkins." Samuel's heart raced as he signaled to his attorney, who stood and gestured toward the doorway. A moment later, the witness entered, a frail woman in her 70s, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried with her an air of quiet strength, a reminder of the family's past. Samuel recognized her as Mrs. Hargrove, the family lawyer who had represented his father and had overseen the trust's creation. "Mrs. Hargrove, please state your relationship to the Jenkins family," Samuel's attorney prompted, his tone professional yet warm. "I was the family attorney for Samuel's father, and I have managed the trust since its inception," she replied, her voice steady and reassuring. "The trust is clear in its stipulations regarding the family home. Any sale requires the consent of both heirs." Marcus's expression contorted with frustration. "This is ridiculous. You can't just bring in someone to back up your claims, Dad. What about my needs? What about my future?" The desperation in his voice twisted like a knife in Samuel's heart. "Your future should not come at the expense of our past," Samuel said, his voice rising, fueled by a mix of sorrow and resolve. "You think selling the house will save you, but it will only deepen the rift between us. We need to find another way." "Enough!" the judge interjected, his voice booming through the hushed courtroom. "We are not here to discuss the merits of the sale in an emotional context. We are here to determine the legality of the trust. Mrs. Hargrove, is this document authentic?" "Yes, Your Honor," she replied, her eyes steady. "I can confirm that it is indeed the original document drafted by Samuel Jenkins's father, and it clearly states the need for unanimous consent." A murmur rippled through the gallery, a chorus of whispers that underscored the gravity of the moment. Samuel's heart surged with a flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by the dread of what Marcus might do next. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You think this is over, Dad? You think you can just use your old tricks to win this? There's more at stake here than just a house." The judge's gavel struck the desk with a sharp crack. "Mr. Jenkins, I will not tolerate threats in my courtroom. If you have something to say that directly pertains to the case, I suggest you say it now." Samuel's breath quickened as he watched his son's face shift from anger to something colder, more calculating. "What do you mean, Marcus?" he asked, the unease creeping into his voice. But Marcus only smirked, a flicker of something dark dancing in his eyes. "You might want to check your facts, Dad. There are things you don't know. I've got more than just the house at stake." The judge's brow furrowed. "Mr. Jenkins, are you suggesting that there are other legal implications in play?" "Maybe," Marcus said, his voice dripping with a newfound confidence. "Maybe I've found a way to keep the house and get out of my debts at the same time. It's all a matter of perspective, you see." Samuel felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen that look in Marcus's eyes before, the glint of ambition that overshadowed family ties. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, the words escaping his lips like a warning. Marcus leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms defiantly. "Let's just say I've made a few arrangements. You'll see." The courtroom fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Samuel felt the room close in around him, the walls reverberating with the gravity of the threat Marcus had just posed. His heart raced as he considered the implications of his son's words. What could Marcus possibly have done? The judge, sensing the rising tension, cleared his throat. "I will not allow this courtroom to turn into a circus. If there are indeed other legal matters at play, then I suggest you disclose them immediately, Mr. Jenkins." "No need to worry about me, Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice smooth and confident. "I'm just playing the hand I've been dealt. And trust me, I've got a full deck." Samuel's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of Marcus's words. He had always sensed that his son had been hiding something, but the depths of Marcus's deception were now laid bare before him. What else was he capable of? The stakes had just been raised, and Samuel felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. "Your Honor," Samuel interjected, trying to regain control of the situation. "I need to know what my son is implying." I can't let him manipulate this situation any further. This isn't just about the house. It's about our family's future. The judge nodded, his expression grave. Very well. Mr. Jenkins, if you have information that could impact these proceedings, I suggest you present it now. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to rule based solely on the evidence before me. Marcus's smirk faltered for a moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Samuel seized the opportunity, drawing on every ounce of strength he could muster. Marcus, this isn't just about money or property. It's about what we value as a family. If you have done something illegal or unethical, it will come to light. Please, just tell me the truth. For a moment, the courtroom held its breath, the air electric with anticipation. Samuel could see the conflict battling within Marcus, the flicker of vulnerability beneath the bravado. But then, just as quickly, the mask slipped back into place, and Marcus shook his head, dismissing Samuel's plea with a wave of his hand. I'm not the problem here, Dad. You are. You always have been, he said, his voice rising again, laced with venom. You're stuck in the past, clinging to this idea of legacy while I'm trying to forge my own future. You think this house means something? It doesn't. It's just a place. Samuel felt the sting of those words, each one a dagger piercing the fragile bond they once shared. It's never just a place, Marcus. It's where your mother and I built our lives. It's where you grew up. It's family. The judge's gavel struck once more, and he leaned forward, his gaze sharp. Enough. If you wish for me to make a ruling based on this emotional tirade, I will do so. But know this. I will not tolerate any further distractions. Do you have anything substantive to offer, Marcus? The tension hung thick in the air, a taut wire ready to snap. Samuel's heart raced, and he could feel the urgency of the moment like a living thing. He had to act, had to regain control over the narrative that was spiraling out of his reach. Your Honor, Samuel said, his voice firm despite the turmoil within. I have something to show you, a piece of evidence that may change everything. He reached into his briefcase, his hands trembling slightly as he pulled out the hidden proof he had stashed away, a document that could expose the truth behind Marcus's dealings, details he had only just uncovered. As he unfolded the paper, the courtroom fell silent, all eyes on Samuel. He took a deep breath, ready to reveal the hidden truths that had been lurking in the shadows of their family's legacy. It was time to confront the betrayal head-on and reclaim not just their home but the very essence of what it meant to be a Jenkins. Here it is, he said, his voice steady. Proof of Marcus's dealings that go beyond just the home. Proof that he's been involved in something much larger than this case. The judge nodded, his interest piqued. Proceed, Mr. Jenkins. With each word Samuel spoke, he felt the weight of the past lift slightly, replaced by a burgeoning sense of determination. The courtroom was no longer just a battleground for legal claims. It had become a stage for redemption, a moment where he could finally confront the legacy of betrayal and reclaim his family's honor. The weight of truth. The courtroom was a silence wrapped in tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. Samuel Jenkins felt the weight of every gaze upon him, as if the air itself held its breath in anticipation of the storm that was about to break. He could see Marcus shifting uncomfortably in his seat, his bravado waning like the last rays of sunlight before dusk. The judge, an imposing figure with a furrowed brow, leaned forward, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, waiting for the next move in this high-stakes chess game. Samuel's heart pounded like a distant drum, echoing the conflict within him. He had rehearsed this moment countless times in his mind, but now, with the trust document cradled tightly in his hands, the gravity of the confrontation felt almost suffocating. It was more than a piece of paper. It was the embodiment of his love, sacrifice, and the betrayal that had shattered his family. Mr. Jenkins, the judge spoke, his voice steady but laced with authority. If you have additional evidence, I suggest you present it now. Samuel took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. He glanced at Marcus, who now avoided his father's gaze, a flicker of guilt crossing his features. Samuel's resolve solidified. He stood, the chair scraping against the polished floor as he did so, commanding attention like a storm gathering force. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "What I hold here is not merely a document. It is the foundation of our family legacy." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle in the room. "It is the trust that governs the family home, an agreement that requires unanimous consent for any sale." He held the document aloft, the courtroom lights glinting off the paper. It was yellowed with age, a testament to the love and labor that had built the house. Memories of laughter and tears, of birthdays and holidays, flooded his mind, and he fought to keep his voice steady. "Marcus sold our home without my consent. He acted as if our bond meant nothing. But this document proves otherwise." The judge leaned forward, taking a keen interest as Samuel approached the bench, handing the document to the court clerk who would then pass it to him. "This trust is not just a legal formality. It is a promise to protect our family's history and honor." Marcus's face contorted, a mixture of anger and desperation. "Dad, you don't understand. I was drowning. I had no choice." His voice rose, cracking under the weight of his emotion. "The bills piled up, and that house was just a burden. I needed to save myself." Samuel's heart twisted, the pain of his son's words piercing deeper than any knife. "You think selling our home was the answer? You think that would save you? You sacrificed not just a house, Marcus, but everything we built together. You betrayed your own father, your family." The air crackled with tension as the judge raised a hand, silencing the escalating confrontation. "Mr. Jenkins, please allow your son to speak. This is a court of law, not a family argument." But Samuel could hardly hear the judge's words over the roar of his own heart. He was standing at the edge of a precipice, one misstep away from falling into the depths of despair. He battled with the urge to let his anger spill over, to lash out at the young man who had once been his pride. Instead, he focused on the trust document, on the hope it represented. "Marcus," he said, his voice low but firm, "you need to understand the depth of what you've done. This isn't just about money. It's about trust, about family. You had alternatives. You could have come to me. We could have faced this together." Marcus's expression flickered, uncertainty creeping into his features. "I thought you'd never help me. You've always been so caught up in your principles, in what's right and wrong. I didn't think you'd want to." "Want to what?" Samuel interrupted, his voice rising despite his attempt to remain calm. "Want to save my son? Want to save our family? You've thrown away everything, and for what? A quick solution." "Enough!" Marcus shouted, his voice echoing through the courtroom like thunder. "You don't know what it's like to feel trapped, to feel the walls closing in. I did what I had to do. Did you?" Samuel shot back, his frustration boiling over. "Or did you do what was easiest, what was most convenient? You've turned your back on this family, and now you stand here expecting sympathy." The judge's gavel struck the bench, a sharp crack that cut through the mounting chaos. "Order in the court." His voice was unwavering, a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. "Mr. Jenkins, I advise you to remain calm." Samuel took a breath, the air heavy with unresolved emotions. He turned back to the judge, his resolve hardening. "Your Honor, I request that we examine the implications of this trust. Marcus's actions were not only reckless but illegal under its terms. I cannot allow him to profit from betrayal." Marcus's face paled, the realization dawning on him like a cold wave crashing over his head. "Dad, please, let's talk about this like adults." His voice softened, desperation creeping in. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was helping us. We can figure this out." But Samuel could see the cracks in Marcus's facade, the desperation morphing into something darker. You've hurt me more than you realize, son. This isn't just about the house. It's about trust. You need to understand that. The judge leaned back, his expression contemplative as he considered the gravity of the situation. I will review the evidence presented before the court. However, I must remind both parties that emotional pleas will not sway legal decisions. The law is clear regarding the terms of the trust. Samuel nodded, his heart still racing. He had fought against the tide of betrayal for so long, and now he was standing on the brink of reclaiming not just his home but also a flicker of hope for his fractured relationship with Marcus. The stakes had never been higher. As the judge prepared to adjourn, Samuel felt a sudden surge of determination. Your Honor, before we conclude, I would like to address my son one last time. The judge nodded, allowing Samuel a moment to speak. He turned to Marcus, who was now staring at the ground, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Marcus, I want you to know that despite everything, I still believe in you. I still believe we can rebuild what's been lost. But it starts with honesty. It starts with you taking responsibility for your choices. Marcus looked up, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, a mixture of shame and longing reflected in his gaze.
I'm sorry, Dad.
I really am. I didn't mean for it to come to this. Samuel's heart softened at the sight of his son's vulnerability, the boy he had raised still flickering beneath the layers of greed and ambition. I hope you find your way back, Marcus. I hope we can find our way back together. As the gavel fell, signaling the end of the session, Samuel felt a weight lift slightly from his shoulders. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, he felt the faintest glimmer of hope. The trust document, a mere paper to some, had become a symbol of possibility, a chance to reclaim not just the family home, but the bond that had once defined them. As they exited the courtroom, the echoes of their confrontation still ringing in his ears, Samuel knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges. But he was no longer a victim of betrayal. He was a man ready to fight for redemption, ready to reclaim his legacy. And as he walked beside Marcus, he sensed that perhaps, just perhaps, they could face the future together.